As political tensions in Kenya rise, confidence in the economy is falling. Even in upmarket commercial districts like Kilimani, businesses have been hit hard by election turmoil. Judy Njogu usually sells at least 10 cars a week. Now those sales have more than halved.
People didn't expect what happened to happen, that we're going back to do elections again. So everyone is a bit just not so sure. Even the investors, most of the people who are already here and they wanted to buy some cars, mostly we have corporate clients, they're a bit skeptic about spending money immediately.
Opposition leader Raila Odinga lost against President Uhuru Kenyatta in August, but the Supreme Court annulled that result, saying there were irregularities. Odinga then withdrew from a rerun scheduled for October 26th and urged his supporters to boycott the polls. Kenyatta insists the vote must go ahead. The presidential election has been a big blow to Kenya's $70 billion a year economy. For the first time in 4 years, economic growth is expected to fall below 5%.
GDP growth and economic activity on the back of the second election will be the sacrificial lamb or the shock absorber, if you like. I think the wait-and-see approach that we've spoken about, that the industrial sector and other sectors are adopting, could get entrenched for a while longer.
And as the economy is weakening, it is ordinary people who are most affected.
In the near term, what we're going to see is a lot more job losses. That is a fact, regardless of what sector you are in. If you think about it from an inflation perspective, the cost of living, of course, during election months, during periods of prolonged political uncertainty, we normally see transport costs go up. So that typically tends to have an impact, a subsequent impact for food prices.
Nairobi's minibus taxis alone have reported a 30% decline in revenue during September. In Kibera, where many live on less than $1 a day during stable times, job cuts hurt the most.
We don't have order. We cannot take this our material to other buyers, those who buy them. They said their business is low, so I had to reduce the workers. So I just have 3. 2 of them are now out of job.
The election controversy has dragged Kenya into its worst political crisis in 10 years. And with the electoral process itself in question, that crisis is only likely to further strain East Africa's largest economy. Mmalegabe Motsepe, TRT World.
And joining me from London is Jordan Anderson. He's an Africa analyst at investment firm IHS Markit. It's great to have you with us on Money Talks. So you just heard there the situation on the ground in Kenya. But as an overseas investor, how do you play the Kenya story right now?
Well, what we're expecting to see now from the Kenyan economy is that we've moderated our forecast for real GDP growth down to 5%. This is down from 5.4%. But to be honest, this is driven much more by uneven rains and drought conditions affecting parts of the agricultural sector than it is by the political unrest within the country. Now, granted, concerns about political unrest and protests have weighed on investors, and we think this has led to less robust economic activity in the country. But really, the key concern there is about the level of protests and riots that we're going to see. Now, during the 2013 unrest, that we saw, we don't think that's going to be equaled by the unrest this year. It's not going to reach 2013 levels. It's certainly not going to reach the higher levels of 2007. And when we're thinking about the impact that unrest has on GDP growth, really, while the high levels of unrest around the 2007 elections had some impact on GDP growth, the lower levels of 2013 didn't significantly impact GDP, and the even lower levels we're expecting this year, therefore, we're not expecting to have a significant impact on GDP at all.
OK, Jordan, so you mentioned some key issues there which are still systemically important to Kenya, the drought, the credit crunch, high youth unemployment, income disparities, the list goes on with Kenya. But now that Raila Odinga is out of the picture, and let's say, for the sake of argument, that Kenyatta wins this election, does he have the right policy mix to deal with those systemic issues?
You're absolutely right to make that argument. going forwards, having received 54% of the vote at the last election, now with his main opponent being removed, Kenyatta looks like he's in a strong position to be re-elected. One key policy we're expecting to see him bring in, along with his Jubilee Party, who holds about 47% of the seats in the National Assembly, is the lifting of a cap on interest rates that is currently restricting private sector access to credit. Any day now, we're expecting to see a report be released by the central bank in Kenya, which we're expecting to provide ammunition for those who want to see that cap on interest rates being removed. Therefore, we're expecting to see a greater access gradually to credits within the private sector in Kenya. So that's one policy that is going to try to address that. A second key policy we're expecting to see in early 2018 are amendments to Kenya's mining code, which are meant to bring in more competitive rates of state ownership and of production royalties in comparison to some of Kenya's neighboring countries such as Tanzania.
OK. After the Supreme Court annulled the last election in August, Jordan, some investors saw that as a sign of newfound credibility in the institutions. After these latest rulings by the government and by the High Court, has that optimism gone away?
I don't think the optimism has gone away. I think it's still a strong indication of the independence of the Kenyan court institutions. Obviously, going forwards, we're going to have to see to what extent this is respected, to what extent all the parties buy into the eventual election result. We may actually see a rerun of the election not being held if a current request that's been lodged in the courts to remove the third and fourth place finishers would remove them from the ballot. That would actually result in only Kenyatta being there.
Jordan, I'm afraid we are out of time, but great to have you on the show. Jordan Anderson of IHS Markit in London.